cities transition governance practices for sustainable urban freight systems. And that is really work in progress. It's a study that we are doing right now. And I'm doing this. My name is Kervall, and I do this together with my colleague, Professor Henrik Paulsson, and another colleague called Jamil Khan. So the background, we heard about it this morning, that urban freight activities, they grow and provide value for cities, but they also create negative or externalities. And cities, they tend to commit to different sustainability goals. And ultimately, urban freight must develop toward these goals. But it seems like cities have difficulties guiding development of urban freight systems toward these goals. So what we would like to do in this study is to explore how city managements how they work actually to govern their urban freight systems toward sustainability and understand why they use these practices. And in the end, hopefully, identify practices which support transitions towards sustainability. So we work with 6 Swedish cities at the moment. We have selected cities with 50 to 200,000 inhabitants, which means that we exclude the 3 biggest cities in Sweden. These cities are spread all over the country. They have all made a commitment to be climate neutral in 2030. And they have also been identifying top locations in Sweden by the logistics industry. So in some way, they are very interesting for the logistics industry. We work with semi-structured interviews as our main data collection method, and we structure the information we have from these interviews through an analytical framework, and I will show you that. At the moment, we work with the framework in 3 levels. We have a multi-level perspective on transitions, which give some kind of overview of the factors and forces that are active in a societal, in a change of a societal system, so it's a socio-technical system. We have a transition management framework, which is more hands-on and suggest what city managements should focus on different stages of a transition. And we have a model for managed change processes in urban freight systems, which deals with how city managements should work with addressing the barriers that we know exist to change. And I will go into level 2 and 3 here in this presentation. So if we briefly look at level 2 here, we have a transition management framework with 4 levels. There is the strategical, tactical, operational, and reflexive level. And here it briefly describes what the city management teams should focus, or a management team for a transition should work with at different stages of a transition. And ambitions with this framework in its original form is to let the long-term perspective guide short-term actions, handle uncertainties, support networking, and give room for innovations. And then also to foster a reflexive approach. So it's not revolutionary, but it's still important principles. And when we use this framework, we have to adapt it a bit to the context of a city. This was developed for large societal changes that might take decades and changes in cultures and so on. And the planning horizon for a city, typically on a strategic level, is maybe 5 to 15 years, which corresponds to tactical level in this framework. The other part of the framework, the third part, is this model that show how barrier types should be addressed in managed change processes for urban freight systems. And this model is inspired by inputs from strategic management, planning, and change management. And it basically just suggests an order of priority for addressing the barriers to change identified in urban freight systems. And the purpose is to maximize the effect of governance activities. So now we will have a look at, I mean, this is work in progress. So we will have a look at data from 2 cities, and we will have a look at it through these 2 frameworks. So on a strategical level, for a city, that is a societal context when we look at it through this framework. It's about affecting cultures and paradigms in society, and cities would normally not do that to a large extent. So it's a societal context for the city. And these 2 cities, left and right here in the picture, they work in fairly similar ways with this. But when it comes to the tactical level, it becomes interesting. On a tactical level, you're supposed to work with developing coalitions with other stakeholders, create images of the future, and develop some kind of more detailed transition agendas. And when we look at the cities, these 2 cities here, we see that they have, despite working in the same societal context, despite having done the same commitments on high level, they have landed in different priorities. The first city does nothing for sustainable urban freight. They are more or less fully focused on growing as a logistics node. While the second city, they cooperate with actors on all governance levels for sustainable transport. And in sustainable transport, they include the freight. They have also a picture, an image of being an attractive, climate neutral, growth-oriented city in the future. When it comes to agendas, well, logically, in the first city, we see no agenda for transitioning at all the urban freight system. They focus on growth. While the second city focuses on sustainable transport, including sustainable urban freight. But they have done a prioritization of passenger transport first, because that has most climate impact, and then continue with the freight in a second step. When we look at the operational level, time horizon of 1 to 5 years, first city logically does nothing on that, mobilizing actors, but the second city work for sustainable transport. And when it comes to projects, working with innovation projects and so on, we see nothing of that in City 1, while City 2 work with infrastructure projects for sustainable transport. And that has spillover effects on the urban freight as well. So we see that it will have positive effects for modal shift. They will relocate flows to more suitable places in the city. It also creates jobs in less developed areas, etc. So it becomes a total package here. And when we look at how they monitor and evaluate their progress, We see that the first city works very hierarchical within functional reporting, while the second city works with both horizontal and vertical dissemination of any results, and also to other cities. If we look at how they address the barriers that we know exist in change processes for urban freight systems, we know that I prepared 3 examples here. And due to time limitations, I think we stick to 2 of them. Take politics and goals here. In politics, we know, in the category of politics, we know that we have a barrier effect to change if we have an unclear direction from politics. We also know that if the politics show a lack of commitment, we have a barrier effect. And if we look at how City 1 work with this, we see no direction, no commitment logically. While in City 2, we have a direction toward climate neutral transport first, including freight, and a clear commitment to first be a fossil-free city, and a couple of years later on, they have a clear commitment to be climate neutral. If we look at the goals, we know that we have a barrier effect if the goals are unaligned or unclear. In City 1, we see no activities to align or clarify goals toward sustainable urban freight. You know the story now. And in City 2, we can see that they align and clarify city goals towards sustainable urban transport, which give effects also for urban freight. Yeah. So this is early results. It's 2 of 6 cities, and very preliminary analysis so far. What we can say is that a similar strategic context on a high level and similar high-level commitments can apparently lead to very different tactical and operational priorities and practices. And next for us is to develop this, is to connect the dots, to develop the analysis with performance indicators for sustainability, to collect and structure data from all 6 cities, of course, and to see what comes out of this, because it was surprisingly different practices that we saw in the first 2 cities. And we also consider adding frameworks to add sustainability indicators, what data sources, if we could have more data sources in here, and anything else. And we are very happy to discuss that with you. Thank you for listening. Yes.
Thank you. That was really interesting. I just wondered if you had any early hypotheses on why the 2 cities were so different. What the causes of that difference was, whether it was individual politicians or individual social priorities or whatever it was.
Very good question. And basically, no really good answer to that at the moment. I personally didn't expect these results. Of course, the individual politicians, they set the agenda in a city. And depending on where they are on a scale, compared to the national debate that has changed a bit in Sweden over the last years, that can be one reason, but we don't know at the moment.